Would you say that it's a notion wrongly set in the minds of subcontinent students that it's very hard to get to the US colleges?
I think it's an easy process. Easy is not a word. It's manageable process. Student really wants to be a student.
Yeah.
They know the school they want to go to. Their documents are authentic all the way through the bank statement. If they do the right thing and they don't try to rush it, I think it's pretty easy.
Even though Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister do get along well and we can expect a good relationship going on, do you think the visa policies and the OPT and the educational policies might have something to do with the policy change?
I'm an optimist. I'm not a pessimist. President Trump loves legal immigrants. He loves taxpayers.
Right.
He loves high-earning taxpayers. What are STEM-based Indian grad students? They are potential high-earning taxpayers.
Would you advocate for a student with a lot of potential but not having the financial background to take that gamble and come to the US?
Depends on the program. And I say this, I have a son that's in college and he wants to go to law school. It depends on what is that ROI on that degree, and people have to think of it that way. This is a return on your investment, your family, whoever is helping you with that education, or the institution. If this institution is going to fund you, they're funding you for a reason.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of fully funded scholarships out there, but they exist.
Yeah.
You can get them, but they want you to be the best of the best. They want something special from you.
That's right.
And if you think you have that, I think everybody should go for it. The kids are bright, but the biggest thing I hear all the time is that they just don't make enough money. Yeah. President Trump is against, he wants it all back. He wants you to bring your companies back to the United States. He wants to make every car in the United States. He wants to do everything he can. No reason to fear, you just want it. You have to want it, and people who help you are gonna know if you want it.
The global education landscape right now is somewhat of a conundrum, especially for the students of Indian subcontinent aspiring to study in the US and elsewhere. With the Trump administration back at the helm, the recent crackdown on illegal immigrants, and the pertaining speculations around the H-1B policies, do we have the clarity we need? To break it down for us, I'm joined by Mr. Jeffrey Greenip, the Executive Vice President and co-founder of Enrollment Advisory Group, with over a decade-long experience in higher education. Mr. Jeffrey has been playing a very crucial role in helping universities and students navigate through this convoluted process. Mr. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here with us at Times Now.
Thank you for having me.
Before I dive into specifics, let's just start by knowing a little more about the EAG and what it does, and what's the journey been like so far.
Yeah, Enrollment Advisory Group was founded by me and my business partner Ken in 2017. Our main focus was to help colleges and universities around the United States, throughout the United States, with any of their domestic or international challenges to meet their enrollment goals. The demographic of students in the United States is shrinking every year, so there's less and less domestic students for colleges to choose from to enroll, so many are turning to international to fill their seats. So we founded the company and started off real well, and then COVID came.
Right.
It was a very interesting time through COVID, but we did very well.
That's an interesting aspect that I would touch upon later, because COVID, of course, must have changed things. But EAG in particular, it has a fairly large global footprint. How would you describe your impact internationally?
Currently, we have about 39 employees. 50% of those employees are based here in India. The rest are throughout the globe, whether they're out of Nepal, 3 to 4 in Nepal, Dominican Republic, Panama, people everywhere. And really that's our goal, is to help schools, not in just one area. You can't build an entire portfolio based on one country, one program, a male or female. You need to have a lot of diversity in your student population, so you're not dependent on one population. So that's part of what we do, is we work with them on small projects. It's when you think of China and India, it's a big population, a lot of students want to go to school. You know, schools could get spoiled and say, oh, I'll just recruit there and we can get hundreds of students. But in reality, one bad thing happens, which has happened several times.
Just like
you lose COVID. Even prior to the Trump administration, India visas were down. They go up, they go down. And nobody really ever makes sense of why it happens. So if you can find other markets that maybe get 10 or 15 kids and you build 8 to 10 of those markets, it's a lot easier for an institution to be comfortable saying, okay, if something bad happens somewhere, we can weather that storm.
Would you identify India as one of your key bases or places where you would largely eye a large set of students?
It's probably our biggest market for 2 of our schools. We have 4 schools currently in the United States. We have Colorado Mesa and Grand Junction, Colorado, which is primarily undergraduate school. They have a lot of great programs. Hospitality, culinary are just a couple of them that I like to highlight. So the undergrad market in India isn't as huge as it is in other places. University of Bridgeport, which is our largest school for India, has a large postgraduate population, a lot of STEM programs, a great computer science, engineering program. So they've been in India for years, probably 20 years, 25 years recruiting. So they're a well-known institution. They're about 35 to 45 minutes outside of New York City. So it's close enough that they're close, but far enough away where the housing prices don't kill you. And that's what a lot of people don't realize when you look at a school. You're looking at both. So India probably makes up about 50% of our total population. We've enrolled 4,000 students since 2017 when we launched the company, which is pretty good numbers. Probably about 50%, 48% of that comes from India.
Going purely by the merits of data, I think India has overtaken China in terms of students heading out to US.
Yes, they did in 23, 24.
Why is it that the Indians are driving this trend of heading out to US?
I think there's a few reasons. A, the US emphasis on STEM right now is big. The 3-year OPT option for training and then ultimately the H-1B process is appealing to Indian students, whereas maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Canada was probably the most appealing because of the pathway to citizenship. And although the United States doesn't do that, what the United States is consistent. I don't say we're perfect, but our policy has always been pretty much the same. It varies. The approval rates change, but we don't fluctuate with our desire and our strategies to enroll international students. It's pretty clear what they do.
Right. So would you say that it's a notion, or it's a notion wrongly set in the minds of subcontinent students that it's very hard to get to the US colleges? Going just by data, the influx is huge. But the notion that I see, that I sense over here locally is that it's fairly tough, the process is very convoluted.
I think it's an easy process. I think easy is not a word. It's manageable process if you're doing the right things. To me, if a student really wants to be a student, they know the school they want to go to, their documents are authentic, from the academic document to the English TOEFL, proof of English document, all the way through the bank statement. If they do the right thing and everything is in order and they don't try to rush it, I think it's pretty easy. We generate just one school probably 2,000 to 3,000 I-20s a year for students who do the right things, and there's a lot of students. That's not all just India. That's globally, but it's for the students who can do the right thing. I think it's simplistic.
Could you simplify when you say by rushing the process or doing the right things? What do you mean?
I think it even starts when they're younger, for undergrad and grad, but we'll talk mostly about India, which is primarily a grad market. So let's stick with India for a second. And grad. If schools look at the number of backlogs, so from the time you step foot in college, then a college in the U.S. is not going to look. They want to make sure you graduated from high school or secondary school, but in reality, they're going to look at your college work. And if you have 30 backlogs, so you have to repeat 30, they're going to look at that, and that doesn't shed good light on a student. So I say it starts there, and from that, if they did that, and sometimes certain schools require, if you want to do a STEM computer science program, you had to come from an engineering background. Some people like business and then they want to go into computers, which some of our schools allow you to be interdisciplinary. So I don't think it's as much about the program, but it's about how you do in that college, and then really just set up. If you start looking for a school in October, November, the traditional cycle is you start researching your schools in September, October, November of your senior year, whether that's college or high school. And by January you start getting your admit letters, and some cases sooner. February, March, you have to start getting your financial documents in order. If you need English proficiency, you've done that in that amount of time.
Yeah.
And if by February everything's in, you'll have an I-20 in March. You can start trying to get your appointment.
Really, it's that simple, you'd say?
I think it's that fast and that simple. I really do. For the people who've done the right thing.
Okay.
For the people who have done the right, which is the majority of it. By the way, it's the majority of students that I've met that do the right thing. They just, some of them, their parents, it's the money. The money's the hardest part. The bank statement is probably the hardest part.
Would you say that's one of the key elements as to why a student, an aspiring student, cannot make it to the US, the financial baggage?
The finance is what, I think if everybody could get approved a visa and had the financial wherewithal, they wouldn't go anywhere else. They would all come to the United States.
No, I mean.
But that is the biggest, those are the biggest two hurdles.
Would you advocate for a student with a lot of potential, but not having the financial background, to take that gamble and come to the US?
Depends on the program. And I say this, I have a son that's in college and he wants to go to law school. It depends on what is that ROI on that degree, and people have to think of it that way. This is a return on your investment, your family, whoever is helping you with that education, or the institution. If an institution is going to fund you, they're funding you for a reason.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of fully funded scholarships out there, but they exist.
Yeah.
You can get them, but they want you to be the best of the best. They want something special from you.
That's right.
And if you think you have that, I think everybody should go for it. I think everybody should.
But with this huge influx, Mr. Jeffrey, I mean, it's a huge influx of students heading out. I think, and it cannot happen at the expense of quality, I would assume.
Right.
So, do you really sense the dip in quality of students academically, in terms of education, just purely on the merit of their ability to sustain and score and stand out, maybe?
I think the student from India, and that's why I like the market so much. I think the quality of student is here. I do, and I think there's a lot of them. It all goes down to money. That's where I think money is has the biggest impact.
I come from a point of view where I feel that just maths and science and engineering is not the only forte to make it big.
Correct.
In the West, especially. But somehow the notion set in India is that you need to be a nerd. You need to be very good at maths and being able to solve.
So that's why they all do it. That's why they
probably why. And because, I mean, it's a fair assumption that US does house a lot of computer engineers and developers. But other than that, would you say there's a reasonable market and a vacuum or a space for students who are not science oriented, if I could say?
Yeah, the whole science. I mean, my second largest that we recruit for is the medical fields, whether it's
that's the second
nursing.
largest, of course.
Yeah, that's the second largest.
But then of course it's
business.
But then that also science. It's
also science. That's why I didn't want to go right there. But so then you would go business, and that's the next one, and that's where it gets broad. Whether students want management or marketing, or they want digital media, because you can combine a little tech. You don't have to be a nerd.
Yeah.
To use your word, I like to. To be a good digital marketer.
Yeah.
And to know your way around, and to understand what people will like and what people will respond to with marketing. So the business fields are all solid. I think again it goes back to return on investment. All of those programs have good earning potential, and I think that's what's most important to most students from any country.
Right.
Is I'm investing X amount of dollars to go to the United States or any country to study. Am I going to make more than the above average salary of somebody in India when I either return or I stay, whatever? And how long can I stay, and what's the amount of money? And that's why I think the STEM designation is so big, because a student with computer science can graduate, make 70 or 80,000. If he does the 3 years of STEM OPT, work experience, you know, that's 210,000 in earnings, you know, that they made, whereas maybe a business student might make 50 to 60 or 40 to 60. You know, if somebody goes hospitality, and there's a lot of hospitality here. I mean, there's a lot of hotels in India.
Of course.
And I've been to a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know, the kids are bright, but the biggest thing I hear all the time is that they just don't make enough money.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and why go to the United States for hospitality, although it's some of the best hospitality education you can get, if you're not going to come back here and make it double what everybody else makes. And that's where some of the misconception is. It's not only about coming back at that first job, but it's your lifetime earnings. And that's what I think students really need to pay attention to. And that's, you know, even if you do get to stay for 3 years because of STEM or one without, wherever you go, it's how much are you going to make over a lifetime? And there's dozens of studies out there that just show that a bachelor's degree makes significantly more than no bachelor's degree, and a master's degree makes more than a bachelor's degree.
Yeah. Would you as an advisor make people aware of the risks involved, just like you mentioned, that's a lot of money being invested? Or does EAG as an organization do it? Is that one of the...
We really are a facilitator. What we do is we do the recruitment. And what we're trying to find is a best fit student for our partner institutions.
Right.
And whether that is academically prepared, whether it's that they want to be at that institution studying what that institution has to offer, and ultimately, do they have the ability to pay? That is a part of the component.
Yeah.
But more than, I think, the institution and us as EAG, I think the student, when they get to the embassy for their visa appointment in the United States, you don't need to go to it. A domestic student doesn't have to ask anybody. They just take a loan and go to college. Here, you have to not only show the paper that says you have the ability to pay for a year, not only tuition, but housing and travel and books and other expenses, but you also had to convince your parents to give you the document, or your family, whoever gave it to you, and you have to then go to an embassy, and you have to sit and do an interview, and that interview is about your fit at that institution. And that's where I believe most of the people who fail in the interview process, it's either because they didn't do it, they really didn't want to be a student, they're going for the wrong reasons, or they didn't have the financial wherewithal, and they thought they did, and it's not too hard to see and to figure out if they do it. The first question, anytime I go to a college fair, I'd rather see somebody show me an SAT score and ask me what they should study and do they have a shot to get in. But 90% of the questions at a college fair, the first question they ask is, how big is your scholarship? Yeah. And that tells you right there. They already know it's about money. And they also seek the assurances of getting a job later on. Yeah, that's second. The job placement is the second question.
Got it. You have a lot of partner institutions, right?
Yep, 4 partner institutions, right.
So could you throw a little more light on those associations and on those universities?
I did Colorado Mesa in Grand Junction. Nova Southeastern University is a top tier, top 200 research institution, very big into medical, biomedical sciences, undergrad and graduate. It's more of a graduate school than an undergraduate school. It's again in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is about half an hour north of Miami. University of Bridgeport in Bridgeport, Connecticut, I mentioned as well. About 45 minutes on a train from New York City, on the coast of Connecticut, beautiful coast, very strong in like I had said, the sciences and computer science and engineering.
And what are the markers for you to partner with the university?
How we pick our partners?
Yeah, you could put it like that.
How we choose? William Patterson is our
fourth. Or do you get
one.
chosen from? Do you get chosen?
It's both. William Patterson is our fourth. So William Patterson University in Wayne, New Jersey is like 20 minutes from New York City.
Right.
They're really big in India right now at the undergrad level. So they're really popular. A lot of great programs. They just created a STEM computer science master's degree. But we really feel when we do a school visit, to discuss whether or not we want to partner with a school. There's three things. Why do they really want to internationalize their campus? What is the driving force? Why do they want to do it? Do we believe it can happen? Based on the programs they have, based on their price point. We won't take a school that doesn't offer a scholarship, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If a school isn't willing to invest in the student.
And that's because you're catering to a lot of Indian masses over here?
No, it's everybody. India is not even our largest need base.
But it's significantly higher.
Significantly higher, but the need that comes out of Jamaica and the Bahamas is significant as well.
Okay.
The wealth profile of a family in those countries are similar.
Okay.
I don't know that I could say equal, but there's a lot more people, I believe, with money in India than there is in Jamaica and the Bahamas. That just it's sheer volume of students, first of all, but even just the way it's run, and they're 100% based on tourism. If tourism is down, their parents' jobs are down. And here you have a ton of industry.
I'm sure that's also part of the world where you travel often.
Yes.
So could you, I mean, just because I'm curious, could you lay down the difference in psyche, the expectations, and everything else that students want to cater to?
From different countries?
From different countries, yeah. Let's say Indian subcontinent.
Yeah, India, they want return on investment. They want to know their job prospects. They want to know how long they can stay in the country.
Yeah, and they don't, the Jamaicans or...
The Jamaicans ask that as well, but Jamaicans, in my mind, Jamaica, the Caribbean, Central South America, Latin America are really parent-driven. They want the parents want their kids to attain higher education at the bachelor's degree level. It's not a grad market; it's an undergrad market.
Right.
And whereas most students, most of the students I meet in India are at the grad level, so it's really the second degree. The parents already got what they wanted with the first degree. Now they want to go study.
Yeah.
Here in these other parts, like St. Martin. Again, those countries just want their kids to get education, and they don't feel that their home countries are the best place for them to get that education. And most of those students go back. Most of those students don't have a plan to stay in the United States. If it can happen, it can happen. 78% of the H-1B visa holders in the United States are Indian. They're Indian. So it's not like all these little countries are taking all the spots. They go. They get their degree and they go back.
Okay.
And
voluntarily?
Huh?
Voluntarily,
they they do most of the time 1 year because they're not STEM based either. They're more of the business, the hospitality, the social sciences, and they do the 1 year work experience after they graduate, and then they typically go back.
Okay.
At probably a 90% rate.
Okay.
They'll go back to their home country.
So just understanding the dynamic between you and the universities, what would you say? I mean, what is the value you create for them?
As EAG?
Essentially, yeah.
We instead of hiring, our value proposition for a school is multiple, all the expertise we bring, but ultimately for international recruitment, we hire people around the globe that live in country, speak the language, know the people. They don't have to pay for plane tickets. It's not, we call it armchair recruitment, where you fly to India for 2 weeks and do fairs and then fly home and you're back in wherever, New York. And then you're, okay, I'm going to go do an Education USA in Africa, and you do 2 weeks in Africa, then you go home and spot recruitment. And there's just no consistency, there's no brand being built when schools do it that way. And what we found is that by doing it in country, and by doing it in a consortium-based model where we have multiple people working for one school in some cases, or we hire dedicated recruiters for one school, we do it multiple different ways.
Okay.
Schools can't afford to do that. They just can't afford to, some can, some don't need us. The higher ranked institutions, the top 50, top 75.
And there are more organizations like yours, like the AGs?
There's about 4 or 5 players in the market
that
are pretty consistent out there. They've done great work, And a lot of them do pathway programs, which we don't do. They,
Yeah.
they get involved in the academics, maybe helping students get a little bit better to get into school. We stay away from it. We're strictly a recruitment arm. And our goal is to, we think, what I think another value proposition is really for the family, not even the institution, is if you can't afford, if you want to go to the States and you can't afford New York, not even because of, say the tuition was the same, and you can't afford Bridgeport because of the housing in and around the New York City area, we could move you to Colorado, we could move Florida, so you could stay all within one group. And that's why our schools are, we want diversity in our institutions. We don't take two from the same state. We don't, every school has business. I mean, that's just, business is the #1 program. Psychology, business, nursing in the United States, those, all of our schools probably have those. So we want that student to be comfortable that we'll help them, and if it's the wrong place, they don't have to go find another school. We're not sitting there saying, oh, you really have to come to my school. We have 4 schools, and if it's not one of those 4 schools, we're okay. I mean, to me, I want students to come, I want them to graduate, I want them to go back. If I could get, I'll get my share, but I want the reputation of going to college in the United States, that I want them to tell 10 of their friends. I'm that person, if you tell one and then they tell 2 friends and then they tell 2 friends.
Right, it's a community then.
It's a community.
Yeah.
You're building, that's brand. That to me is, I'd rather have my kids happy saying how great the experience was. Whether they ended up at the exact school they might have thought they wanted at the beginning, but they ended up, as long as they ended up at the right school, then we did our job, all of us.
I was going to come to this later, but since you mentioned OPT, do you think, I mean, there are some kind of conceptions building up that the policies might change, including H-1Bs as well. I can't say that it's a sense of fear that's creeping in, but of course with the administration change with President Trump, even though Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister do get along well and we can expect a good relationship going on, but then do you think the visa policies and the OPT and the educational policies might have something to do with the policy change?
I'm an optimist. I'm not a pessimist. I'm what I call myself an eternal optimist. And I look at everything that I hear, anything negative that's out there, and I just think about it. I think he's going to help. I think President Trump, with the relationship with Prime Minister Modi, just what they just talked about, the bilateral trade, the increase in bilateral trade is significant, and that's students. Students are trade really, and they're paying tuition. It's money. President Trump loves legal immigrants. He loves taxpayers.
Right.
He loves high-earning taxpayers. What are STEM-based Indian grad students? They are potential high-earning
taxpayers
that pretend it might only be for 3 years with an H. So he's already talked about, expanding it. Whether it was under Biden or Trump, there's already 20,000 of the visas are targeted to students who graduate from a college in the United States. He talked about making it easier. If he can do it or not, I'm waiting to see. But everything I've heard him say about immigration, I think a student in India should be happy about. And I know it doesn't come here that way.
Yeah,
but
that's very optimistic, and I'm really, really happy to hear that. But Mr. Jeffrey, I mean, Mr. President is also obliged to cater to the sentiments of the people of America.
Yes.
And the sentiments might not be very welcoming for the people, the students coming from all across the world, and not just the US. Do you think that might play on their minds at all?
I don't. I think with the shrinking demographic.
But would you agree with the sentiment, first of all?
I agree that people in the United States fear losing their jobs, whether it's to AI, whether it's to outsourcing, or whether it's to graduates coming from other countries. It's a fear. I've never been.
And is that a valid fear, you would say?
Depending on how you do your job, depending on what job you're in and what you do for work. I mean, I look at toll booths. Toll booths attendants were replaced by computer systems and automated tolls. A lot of things are happening. Checkout lines in stores are being automated, but the unemployment rate is still pretty much
the same,
the lowest it's been in years. So there's just different jobs. And I think most of the people that are afraid, I had a job for 30 years, 24 years. I left one and then I went to another one. And then I left that job to do this. That first job was hard to leave. The second one was harder because there was no paycheck when you open a business. There's no, you're actually laying out your own money. And so that risk is what you have to take in yourself. But I see it. I just, if unemployment was 7% and there weren't job postings everywhere, I would agree with it. I just don't see that. So I won't buy into the fear of the American people for loss of jobs due to international students coming in.
No, these are very sorted, sane-minded sentiments and thoughts, I would say. But again, looking for optimism, what do you think the value Indian students create in the US?
I think it's a type of programs they can do. It's what they can do that we can't. It's the engineering and the computer science, and to me, whether or not, some of the fear, go back to a little bit of the fear, is the outsourcing. If somebody outsources a call center to India, that's different than what we're talking about.
Right.
That could take jobs away from the United States, but Trump is against that too.
Yeah.
President Trump is against, he wants it all back. He wants you to bring your companies back to the United States. He wants to make every car in the United States. He wants to do everything he can. So the outsourcing is different, but I think the type of talent that students from India bring in specifically technology field and healthcare to some point, whether it's the management of hospitals, it's the work ethic too. I think our kids are already there, and they have they still want to get ahead. They still want to make a good living for themselves. They want to make as much money as they can make, but they don't work as hard.
But then the immigrants maybe are pushing them to work a little more harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And in order for everybody to get better, you're only as good as your weakest link. And if your weakest link is a talented student from another country, that's going to make the whole school better. It's going to make the workforce better.
Talking about immigrants, I mean, I'm pretty sure that you would be aware of the recent crackdown that happened. I mean, most of the illegal immigrants were sent down. I don't see it as a concern because they were illegal immigrants and they were meant to be sent back. But do you think that there was a underlying message to the overall exercise?
To any one country or to the whole thing?
To the whole thing.
I think it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
To me, it's President Trump already feels, from what I hear and listen to, that a lot of countries maybe take advantage of the United States. And with trade, is it equal? Aid that we give,
Right.
What do we get back? Anything he talks about, it's always about fair and equal.
But while, Mr. Jeffrey, while we advocate about sentiments that are fostering growth and collaboration, the crackdown may deter the legally applying students as well, do you think?
I hope it doesn't, because if you do it legally, nobody has anything to worry about. No students are F1 visa holders that are deported. We've had a couple in all of our years of doing it. We've had a couple that no-show to an institution. If you no-show to an institution, you don't transfer to another one, you don't transfer, you are now illegal. And if you do that, then you should expect to get deported.
Right.
Maybe you got away, the previous administration, or even in President Trump's first term and any president before that. Maybe it was more lax back then. Maybe this is just a quick statement to your point.
No, I understand that as a process, but then it's a sentiment. It's a notion that just sets in, and maybe it would require an outreach program or maybe more communication to maybe break those shackles. Which you guys are doing right now. That's what I feel.
I think that's what we're trying to do, and I think that's hopefully the message that can get out with anybody that's recruiting, specifically in India, because it is such a large market, and the students are so strong that if you do again, I just go back to it. If you do the right thing, you will never have to worry about it, and if you don't, you will. And if you don't have to worry, if you don't do the right thing, and you don't have to worry about it. You got lucky,
right?
And that's the way they have to look at it. And
absolutely, I agree.
And And that's even what I say about the interview process. People say, how come we had so many denials? And I don't work in a visa office, I never did. I don't really, I'm not exact on any of it, but I know that they're trying to crack down on fraud. And when you see bank statements coming in for 7 kids that have the same name, you're already doing something wrong.
Yeah.
If President Trump does manage to get more H-1B visas to students who graduate U.S. schools, there's going to be stipulations on that. There are going to be stipulations on everything you did was,
Rightly so,
was legal, everything you did was right. You know, you didn't jump around a lot of schools, you did it all right, and your bank statement was one of those documents. That could come back, and if you forged a bank statement or submitted a fraudulent bank statement, you will have something to, you could have something to worry. You won't will. There's no guarantees in life, but
of course.
I would say you probably have a good chance of getting yourself in trouble or not getting one of those H-1Bs that you want, all because you didn't do the right thing. And that to me is, if you do the right thing, I don't think anyone has anything to worry about.
Yeah, no, you've made it clear. Mr. Jeffrey, I mean, we know how things have panned out over the last decade or so, but COVID absolutely must have changed the way things work. What would you say has been the biggest trend change post-COVID? Has there been a dip in the overall applications, or students are still thronging to make their case in?
Yeah, I until last year, India specific and globally, we had increases every year in enrollment and applications at all of our schools.
Okay.
This past year, India took a hit, and whether it was the ending of Biden administration, whether it was pent-up business that was there that couldn't get cleared because of visa appointments in India, or the potential of a new administration, it was like a perfect storm. Everything happened all at once, and all of a sudden there was a dip. But at the same time, then the approval rating went down, so it hurt even more to every.
How were you as an organization, EAG, working your way around during COVID then?
It was interesting. What I think my number one takeaway from COVID was everybody believed prior to COVID that students were going to be recruited online. They were going to go on a computer and they were going to pick their school.
Right.
And what COVID did was forced everybody to do online education, and it made them realize how much they hate it and how much they want that. I call it skin to skin, face to, whether it's face to face, this kind of communication. This is what makes human beings happy. Is this maybe not this exact conversation, but and that's what I think is so important about going away. And whether it's United States or Canada or New Zealand or wherever it is, wherever a student wants to go, and even Prime Minister Modi and President Trump bring a United States school here, they're getting that interaction face to face. That's otherwise just put them online. Yeah. But even they're going down the path of the best thing to do is face to face, and that's where I learned, and I think that just increases costs. Right. There was allowed that people could start online with COVID. There was a lot of exceptions made at institutions that 50% of your program legally, in order to be an F1 student, you have to do so much of your program in person and so much online. Schools were pushing the limit. Now the students are saying, no, I want to go to class. The right ones, not all of them, but the right ones. They want to go to school. They want to talk to that professor. They want to meet their classmates, and that there's just less that can afford it. And I think that's what's from the pent up business. And now that the administration change has happened, I don't think anybody can blame anything on administration changes for 4 years. So as long as the trajectory starts going back up. I think that's what should happen. Since you mentioned Canada and New Zealand and other countries as well, so it is believed, while the laws may be stringent in the US, the process may have a set pattern. It's not that the other countries are doing it any easy, right? Would you say that it is fairly easier to maybe get through the process for US than any other country? Let's say Australia included, New Zealand, Canada. The visa process? Or the visa process, the student. I think to become a student is very similar. When we work at our college fairs, a lot of times we're all in one room. A lot of times there's a room for Europe, there's a room for America. Right. Depends on who runs the college fair. It's not all about the education. It's about the work opportunities and how long can they stay. That's where the difference is. The process to go, I think, is similar. I would say living through the experience of getting in and getting a visa, it's getting tougher now with caps in Canada, but I think that's just the cap. I still think the X number of students that are going to go through are going to do it the same exact way, and with as much ease or as anybody prior. It's all about what are my chances of earning a living fast to help my family that sent me here, and is that chance better in Canada? Is that chance better in New Zealand than it is in the U.S.?
Right.
Because again, in Canada as an example, Canada, you go to school 6 months after you graduate, you can work. 2 years after that, you can start your pathway to citizenship. It's almost like, okay, come to school here, and 4 years later, we're going to love you. And what I say, my only negative thing about the United States that I'd love to see get changed is you come to school and then you graduate and you work 3 years and then you can't work anymore unless you get a business to do so. It's not the government anymore. Now it's an H-1B. Now it's but a business has to sponsor you for that H-1B. It's not, you can't just stay. And that's where I think
even if you're contributing as an employee and you're creating some value to the companies there,
there's no guarantee they're going to give you, they're going to sponsor you. You need support.
Right.
You need a job and you need a company to support you, or you need to win the lottery with not the money lottery, the H-1B
No, I
lottery,
understand.
the lottery.
As an Indian, Mr. Jeffrey, I mean, I sense a kind of despondency to an extent where some of my friends, some of the people I know who've been in Canada are kind of considering coming back because of the lack of opportunities there.
Yeah.
Is that trend also replicating in the US, and do you think that, how do you see that trend evolving over a period of time?
Until, again, if President Trump does what he says he's going to do, which is always not just him, any president, can they deliver on their campaign promises? The economy should continue to grow. I think if the economy continues to grow, the jobs are going to be there. If the jobs are there, then everybody should be happy.
Right.
Again, if we get back to 7% unemployment rate, I'll come back and we'll have another interview. I'm hoping I don't ever see you for that interview. I'll come back for other reasons. But if we can stay at 4 to 5% unemployment, which is, 2 of them aren't even looking anyway. 2 of those percentages, they don't even want to work. I think the economy will grow. If bilateral trade with India continues, going back and forth could be easier. I'm optimistic. I think we're in a good place, and I just hope he can deliver. And I hope Prime Minister Modi can deliver. I mean, I'd love to see him, some of the things he says are solid things to have happen. Let's just see how they do.
That's a very optimistic and positive note to maybe conclude our conversation on. I mean, it's been very, very insightful, Mr. Jeffrey. I'm sure the takeaways here are plenty, and all the good ones. But I think it's important for people to be aware of the legalities and be covered up, have their backs covered with proper documents.
Button up, do it right.
Yeah, do it right.
Do it right.
And there's no reason for them to fear.
No reason to fear. No reason to fear. I mean, you just want it. You have to want it, and people who help you are going to know if you want it. If you want it, you're going to show you want it. You'll get admitted to a school. You'll get your I-20, and you'll go for your visa appointment. Your SOP will be written well, and you'll hopefully have a good interview, and they'll see that you want it too.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jeffrey, for your time. It was a pleasure discussing this.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Looking forward to having you back sometime then.
I will.
Yeah, we'll have a part 2 of this. Thank you.
Thank you.